In our plants overview notes, we talk about the 5 main processes that plants deal with: photosynthesis, cellular respiration, transpiration, reproduction, and growth. Now we're going to be getting into plant tissues that has to deal with all of these as well. The first one we're going to be looking at is dermal. When we think dermal, remember we talked about you go to the dermatologist, and the dermatologist is a skin doctor that we deal with. All right, that dermal means protective or an outer layer. All right, so your dermatologist is your skin doctor. When we're talking about the dermal tissue, we're talking about the protective outer covering of a plant. Okay, so dermal tissue is the protective outer covering, just like your skin would be for us. Okay, there are 3 different main organelles that we find on these dermal tissues. The first one being a cuticle. The cuticle is the waxy covering that prevents plants from drying out. All right, so that's kind of like our lipids in our skin that help us not be SpongeBob and absorb all the water or release all of our water like a sponge. The cuticle, like I said, think about when you put Vaseline on your skin, all right, and then you put water on it and that water beads up. That's what this cuticle is, okay? It's the waxy covering that prevents these plants from drying out. They don't want to lose water, because remember, we need water for photosynthesis to happen. The second thing that they have is a thing called a stomata, all right? This structure here is what opens and closes, all right, in the cuticle, which is on the underside of the leaf, that allows for gas exchange. So this is going to help with that cellular respiration as well as photosynthesis. All right, it's either going to take in carbon dioxide to do photosynthesis, or it's going to release oxygen once it's done. It also helps with transpiration, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, where that water is either expelled or taken in. Okay. Then lastly, we have guard cells. These guard cells, think about, they're the bouncers at the door. All right, they're regulating the opening and closing of these stomata. Okay, they surround each stomata. So each single one of these has 2 guard cells around it, all right? And they're the ones that are going to allow it to open or close, all right? They either get swelled with water and constrict, or they lose water, they shrink, and they open back up, okay? So cuticle is our waxy covering. The stomata are what are going to allow for gas exchange, whether they're open or closed. And that is dependent on the guard cells, all right? They surround each stomata. Main point here, this relates to transpiration. Remember we talked about transpiration is kind of like those plants breathing. They're releasing that water vapor back into the air, okay? So H2O is evaporating out of the plant and gases can enter. So water leaves and gases enter at the same time, okay? But only if these guard cells open the stomata. Okay? Now we're going to move on to ground tissue. So that was dermal. Now we're going to talk about ground tissue. So ground tissue makes up much of the inside of the plant, and provides support and produces and stores materials in roots and stems. Okay? So think ground up. This is what this tissue is, from ground up. All right? So it relates mostly with growth. So as a plant gets larger, it needs to support its size, weight, and nutritional needs. So this is where we have a lot of structures that come into our structure and stability, starting from the base up, all right? Starting with that root system after the seed first germinates. Next is our vascular, okay? This tissue is going to transport water and nutrients inside the plant. All right, we're dealing with inside. So we talked about our vascular system is our veins and our blood, okay? Transporting our blood. Plants have a vascular system as well, where they're transporting their food and their water, okay? So the xylem carries water. So it carries water and minerals up from the roots to the rest of the plant. Remember, we talked about this action happens due to the properties of water, both cohesion and adhesion. Okay, so remember cohesion, they're working together. All right, water molecules are sticking together. Where adhesion, think of it as an adhesive or glue. It's going to stick to something else. So not only are the water molecules sticking together, but they also stick to the inside of the roots and the stem, and they're able to move against gravity up, okay, up to the rest of the plant, to the leaves where photosynthesis can take place. So that is our xylem. Our phloem, remember we talked about this is what's going to carry those sugars or provide the food to our plant, all right? So think that f sound for phloem, the f, even though it's a pH, think phloem, think that f for food, okay? It carries sugars produced in photosynthesis through the plant. So xylem is water, phloem is food, okay? And capillary action, again, that cohesion, adhesion. This is the movement of water, usually up and out of a plant through transpiration, due to adhesion and cohesion. Again, this is what is moving that water through our plant system, okay? And our last one here, the vascular deals, all right, or I should say relates. That's the term where I was going for already. Let me just go ahead and adjust my camera. Relates to photosynthesis and cellular respiration, okay? So it moves reactants and products around the plant. Remember we talked about our reactants and our products with photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So our reactants are going to be on the left side of our arrow, and our products are going to end up being on the right side of our arrow, okay? Vascular tissues relate to transpiration. So the xylem, when it carries the water to the leaves, all right, it carries it to the leaves so that way it can be expelled or let out of the leaves when that stomata opens based on the guard cells. And it relates to growth, lastly, okay? The plant must move that water. That xylem moves the water and the phloem moves the nutrients and sugar around the plant to grow. All right, so just like our vascular system is pumping blood throughout our bodies to keep us functioning, these plants have their own vascular system, moving that water and food for them to keep them going. All right, so again, our three main tissues, we have dermal, so think about the outer coating, think about your skin. We have ground, so think about from the ground up. All right, so from our feet, top of our heads, think about all of that structure in between the bones, pretty much, all right? So the ground tissue is the bones, the structure. And lastly, the vascular, that is your, for us, our blood system, all right? Our blood flow for the plants, it is their water and their nutrients, their food, okay? And that's pretty much it. So moving right along now to leaves.